Well, we watched some great football yesterday. Unfortunately, some of the teams I did not want to win ended up winning. But we are going to learn something from that divisional round, and I'm going to talk about it. What is up, Finn fans? The divisional round has come and gone. We now know who is playing in the championship rounds. It will be the Buffalo Bills taking on the Kansas City Chiefs again. And surprisingly, it is the Washington Commanders taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, a division rivalry on the NFC side. So we are going to look at, as I flip the calendar over because there's a trivia for today, we are going to look at what we've learned from the divisional round, and can the Dolphins learn from it? How close are the Dolphins to competing with said teams? Might be a spoiler there. But before we jump into that, I do have to shout out today's sponsor, and that is Mando. I've talked about Mando before. They have some great products. Now, look, you're in playoff time. If you were the Bills, or if you were the Ravens, or any of these teams that were in a nail biter, you probably had stanky pits and were perspiring and everything at that time. Well, Mando has you covered. Now, Mando has a bunch of cool different products, and they sent me them all. Now, they're whole body deodorants created by a doctor who saw first and foremost the normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. These deodorants do not have any of those harmful aluminum and other stuff. Now, I tend to get rashes, especially when you use like the sticks. I tend to get a rash. So I like to use the sprays. They got them both. Now, this one is bourbon leather. Smells amazing. And this one is Mount Fuji. It smells amazing. They also have some wipes here for your pits, for your everywhere. They also have the bourbon leather acidified body wash. Get all that grubbiness off you. And the whole body deodorant. Got a lotion for that, for your pits and all that other good stuff. So go check out Mando. Click the link in the description, because they got that starter pack with all the stuff I have. Mando starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid deodorant stick I showed you, cream tube deodorant I showed you, 2 free products of your choice, whether it's the mini body wash or the deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% on your starter pack using code DDW at shopmando.com. Yes, that is shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. I like how they have that little rhyme at the end. But for real, go check it out. This stuff smells amazing. I use it. If you can tell, this doesn't have the top on it because I've used it. It smells amazing and it lasts a while. So go check them out. Link is in the description. Go get yourself a nice discount. Shout out to Mando for supporting today's video and the channel. So again, be like, hey, DouglieDoWrong sent me. Your stuff smells great. My downstairs bonanza's never been so fresh. So we are looking at... I'm ridiculous. Real quick, let me give you the trivia and I'll tell you the answer at the end. What wideout on the back-to-back Super Bowl champion Dolphin team of 1972 and 1973. Fun fact, the Miami Dolphins were the first team in NFL history to three-peat. Unfortunately, they didn't three-peat win it, but they're the first team in NFL history to go to 3 straight Super Bowls. So suck on that. Let me read this again. What wideout on the back-to-back Super Bowl champion Dolphins team of 1972 to 1973 has been the first black starting quarterback in pro football when he opened 5 games for the Broncos in 1968. Now this one I don't know. So this is to my OG Dolphin fans. See if you guys can figure that out. If you're like, I don't understand what you just said, just go back and read it again or listen to it again because reading is hard for dyslexics. So divisional round has come and gone. We have the Kansas City Chiefs Washington Commanders, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Buffalo Bill Ravens game just ended for me. Absolutely craziness. Mark Andrews fumble and dropped a 2-point conversion. Yes, Lamar Jackson had the interception and the fumble, but they came back from it, and Mark Andrews just, you're killing me. Then you have the Rams and the Eagles game, which also was a very good competitive game. I didn't think a West Coast team that played in a dome would be as competitive in the snow, but they were. They only lost 28-22. They were competitive. You have the Commanders who came out and bunga, surprised the crap out of everyone, beating Detroit 45-31. And then you have the Kansas City Chiefs, who got a little help from their friends, and we all know who they are, beat the Houston Texans. So looking at these 8 teams, and more importantly, looking at the 4 teams that are going to the championship game, can the Miami Dolphins learn something from these teams? Yes, they most definitely can. Now, I will say this. In the case of Detroit versus Washington, the superior quarterback won that game because Jaden Daniels played flawless football, whereas Jared Goff played hot garbage football, right? Rams, Philly, great game between all the other quarterbacks. Even CJ Stroud had a decent game. Lamar Jackson had the interception of the fumble. Josh Allen played a very sound football game. Didn't do too much. Didn't do too little. He was just very good. But when you look at these teams, right, and I looked them up and I looked at all of these statistics, to me, the things that pointed out, one, offensive line. And I will get to quarterback because I know people, it's multiple was a quarterback. I know, man. I'll get to it. It's called build up to suspense. God, learn how to do these things. So the Ravens had the number 2 overall offensive line. The Buffalo Bills had the number 4 overall offensive line. The Chiefs had the number 5 overall offensive line. The Lions had the number 6 overall offensive line. The Rams had 13. The Eagles had the number 1 offensive line. Washington had the number 8 offensive line. And then you had the low totem pole of the Houston Texans, who were they had a very bad offensive line, bottom 5 in the NFL. Look at the 4 teams that are in the championship game. Bills, top 5 offensive line. Chiefs, top 10 offensive line. Washington, top 10 offensive line. Eagles, top 5 offensive line, actually the best offensive line in football. What does that tell you? What helps to win these games? What helps to get you where you need to go? The offensive line. Now, again, quarterback helps. You saw what Lamar Jackson, again, he had the fumbles, but he still was very dynamic with his legs and made throws. You saw what Josh Allen was able to do. This is the thing that drove me nuts. A little side tangent I had. How many times in the red zone, I'm literally, if you were in the live stream yesterday, I called it. I'm like, Josh Allen's keeping the ball. And he would keep, how do you not just, it makes no sense to me. Anyway, offensive line. These guys had time to throw. They have a running game. Speaking of running game, the Baltimore Ravens, number 1 run game. Buffalo Bills, number 9 run game. Washington Commanders, number 3 run game. You got the Chiefs, who are 22nd run game, which is surprising to me. So, again, there is outliers, I will say, or outliners, or whatever it is. Because when you look at all of these teams, the average are top offensive lines, top run games, and top defenses. Baltimore Ravens, number 2 defense. Buffalo Bills, number 4 defense. Kansas City Chiefs, number 3 defense. Eagles, number 1 defense. Washington, number 5 defense. Top defenses. Now, Detroit was banged up, so if they didn't have 900 people on the IR, they probably have a top defense. These are the things that are important. And then, obviously, the quarterback play. Because you look at these teams, right? Detroit, bad quarterback play, they got destroyed. Throwing interceptions, making stupid mistakes. Baltimore Ravens, interception, stupid mistakes. That cost them, but it also didn't help with Mark Andrews throwing it away. You had the Rams. I don't think Stafford didn't have any interceptions. 26 for 44, 342 yards, 2 touchdowns. He didn't have a bad day. Jalen Hurts, he didn't throw a touchdown, didn't throw an interception, but he did run a touchdown in a nice long run of 44 yards. Quarterbacks matter. The availability of quarterbacks matter. CJ Stroud didn't have a good game, didn't have a bad game. Again, he had some running, but no touchdown, no interceptions. Patrick Mahomes, decent game, had 1 touchdown. It's what matters. The availability of these quarterbacks matters. So what the Miami Dolphins can learn from this, number one, and this is something that has been said on this channel for years on and years in and years out. You build through the trenches. You look at these games of the teams that won. Kansas City Chiefs had 8 sacks on the day when they beat the Houston Texans. You look at the Washington Commanders, they had 2. But the Detroit Lions had 0. They also had 4 interceptions. Washington. 4 interceptions. Defense. What else do we have here? Philadelphia Eagles. You had the Rams with 7 sacks. You had the Eagles with 5 sacks. Trenches. And then you had this previous game. You had 2 sacks by the Buffalo Bills, and you had 1 sack. Now you're facing 2 mobile quarterbacks, and that kind of seems like that is the way of the NFL now. To have if you see me flinch, again, little side note, I took a big old chunk out of my finger. I was cleaning my knife and I slipped my finger, and the reason why it looks like a boomerang is because I taped it, and it's slowly, I kept the chunk of skin on there. If not, that whole chunk would be gone. So I just like banged it and I jolted. The NFL has seemed to go in the way of dual threat quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, dual threat quarterback. Jaden Daniels, dual threat quarterback. Jalen Hurts, a dual threat quarterback. Josh Allen, a dual threat quarterback. Those are your 4 quarterbacks and 4 teams in the AFC and NFC championship game. Even outside of that, you look at all the quarterbacks that have played. The ones that I named. Then you have CJ Stroud, dual threat quarterback. You had Lamar Jackson, a dual threat quarterback. And then you had Detroit, and you had Goff and Stafford. Now, Stafford is just a great quarterback, and then Goff didn't do well. So besides 2 of the quarterbacks that made it to the divisional rounds were dual threat quarterbacks. That might be the way the NFL goes. Now, I have a whole video breaking down what the Dolphins are going to do with their quarterback situation going into 2025. But that is something also you have to take into consideration, because Tua, my biggest knock on Tua Tagovailoa is his availability, right? And when push comes to shove, he is not running. He'll get the ball out quick, but he might make a mistake. His inconsistency is also a problem with me. I've talked about this at time and time again on this channel, that the 2 things that I need to see him do before I gave him a contract extension was stay healthy and be consistent, essentially getting over the hump at the end of the year. Now, he stayed healthy, but he didn't stay consistent, but they still gave him the contract extension. So a lot of what the Dolphins can learn, first and foremost for me, is you got to build through the trenches. Now, we got bit bad by the injury bug, losing Bradley Chubb the year prior, then losing Jalen Phillips to a freak accident where he got hit in the knee by Jordan Poyer's helmet. And then Chop came in, and then we had Emmanuel Ogbah dealing with a tear in his bicep, and like all of these things were just really hindering our pass rush. And even on top of that, we still had Chop get 6.5 sacks, give or take. We still had Sealer get 11 sacks. Like, we still got some pressure and some sacks, but it wasn't enough. Offensive line obviously wasn't enough. We were 26th ranked in the NFL. It was hot garbage. You got to build through the trenches. All of these teams, you're playing in these cold. The only way that we won't have to worry about playing in the cold and all that stuff is if we win the number 1 seed. That ain't happening anytime soon. Like, that ain't happening. And I'm going to talk about the turnaround and the rebuild and all that stuff, because I got stats on that as well. So that's a video in itself. But you got to build through the trenches. You got to have a solid run game. Look at these teams and they're running. Derrick Henry, the Baltimore Ravens ran for 176 yards, 5.9 yards a carry. You had the Buffalo Bills ran for 147 yards, 4.1 yards a carry. You had 3 rushing touchdowns on that game. You had the Houston Texans run for 149 yards, 5.1 yards a carry. You don't even get me started with the Eagles. Saquon Barkley, 205 yards. You had Kieran Williams, 106 rushing yards. Then you had Detroit, 201 with Jahmyr Gibbs with 105 rushing yards, and you had Washington with 182 rushing yards with Brian Robinson with 77 and Jaden Daniels 51. So running is a big part. Because at the end of the year, when you're playing in Kansas City, you're playing in Buffalo, you're playing in Baltimore, you're playing in any of these teams, you're going to have to go and play in, because until you can beat Buffalo, no one's coming to Miami in the playoffs. You got to be able to run the ball, and you got to be able to stop the run. Trenches. Obviously, the defense is important. Defense wins championships, and that's still a thing. But also quarterback play is a thing. You can't be making stupid mental mistakes that we tend to make in critical games and critical situations. You saw what happened with Jared Goff, 23 for 40, 313 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. They had to start doing trick plays with David Montgomery and Jameis Williams, who ends up throwing an interception. Like, they got cute too quick. Really hurt their game. But you see what, like, Josh Allen can do. You see what Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. Now, don't get me wrong. Jalen Hurts has an all-star team around him, but he takes advantage of it. Now, that's a GM. Like, if you want to sit here and say, if you could swap your GM for any GM in the NFL, it's the Philadelphia Eagles GM. They have the best GM in the NFL. The way he built that team around Jalen Hurts is just absolutely ridiculous. Going out and get Saquon Barkley, like, are you kidding me? And the receivers he has, and Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, Goddard, his defense, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Jalen Carter with the draft pick, Cooper DeJean with the draft pick, Nolan Smith Jr. Like, they just have a team stacked on stacked on stacked around him. The Dolphins don't. Now, that gets to my last question, or my last answer, is how far are the Dolphins from these teams? How far are the Dolphins from being in the divisional round? From the team I see right now, they're very far away. This offensive line would not match up with these teams very well at all. The defensive line would get run all over. We don't have enough depth at the defensive tackle position, and you can't rely on Sealer to do everything by himself. Our secondary is not good, especially with the safeties where we're at. Quarterback play isn't too inconsistent. I don't even know if Tua makes it to the playoffs. Again, I like Tua. I think he's a good quarterback, but I'm just being honest with you and what we've seen. You know, out of the 5 years he played, 1 year he played fully healthy. Again, the outlier doesn't really tell everything. We're very far off. And I don't have any faith in Chris Grier that he's going to bring this around. So essentially, in a nutshell, what we learned from the divisional round is you got to build through the trenches and you got to help out your quarterback. Now, Tua's not going to be a mobile quarterback, and Tua is going to be the quarterback for 2025. I got a whole video talking about it. Help him out. Get a run game. Get an offensive, and it doesn't need to be the best. Everyone who says, oh, it's going to be perfect, it doesn't. It just doesn't need to be 26th in the NFL. Give them 15th offensive line. Give them the 16th offensive line. Like, you look at these teams, that, like, the Rams have the 13th best offensive line. Tua would die for that. Doesn't have to be the best. Just not bottom 5. Get them bigger receivers. You're looking at the catch that Puka made on the sideline was just ridiculous. That's what you need. You need receivers who are going to go up and get it. Not under 6 foot. That's what we learned. This team is not built properly for the playoffs. They are not. It's not Tua's fault. It's the front office's fault. Also, Mike McDaniel stopped with the Q plays, just run the flipping ball, because I'm pretty sure the Baltimore Ravens would love to go back in time and run Derrick Henry a little bit more than they actually did. So, comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Let me give you the answer to this trivia question. And one more time, what wideout on the back-to-back Super Bowl champion Dolphin team of 1972 and 1973 had been the first black starting quarterback in pro football when he opened 5 games for the Broncos in 1968? That answer is Marlon Briscoe. Marlon Briscoe, first black quarterback, and he was on the Dolphins' back-to-back Super Bowl championships in 1972 and 1973. Again, first NFL team to go to 3 straight Super Bowls. They went in 71, lost. And then Don Shula said, remember this feeling. Then they went undefeated, and then they went the next year. They won the next 2 after they lost the first one. Comment below. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you tomorrow in the next video. But like usual, stay classy. My friends out.